Now, as I said, the 25th day of the war here in Israel, and the IDF says they are prepared to completely destroy and eliminate Hamas. However, it's going to be a long and tiresome effort. To talk more about the war efforts, I'm joined now by Reserve Major Doron Spielman from the IDF spokesperson unit. Doron, thank you so much for joining us. Just earlier today, we actually saw the IDF release a new video from the commander of the Southern Command saying that troops are going into the Gaza Strip. They're going to be victorious, but it's going to be very, very difficult. Now, it was quite a powerful video release, but I'm curious, is this really the major ground operation, the start of it, that everyone has been talking about for the past 3.5 weeks?
Well, I'll tell you, as we know, the pain inflicted upon the state of Israel by that October 7th attack by Hamas was unprecedented completely. And the response, as we've laid out at the very beginning, is also unprecedented. We've declared war on Hamas, and we've created a battle rhythm and very clearly said that we've used our aerial forces, we've used our naval forces, and now we also have ground forces deployed. And this is in really the staged campaign that we've begun since the very beginning. We've increased our ground operations, as the Chief of Staff has said, and we have different units that are combined units that are operating Gaza as exactly according to the battle plan that we've laid forth from the very beginning, which is needed to engage in that long road that you're talking to dismantle Hamas completely.
Well, meanwhile, a very, very successful operation we saw just yesterday after the first hostage was successfully rescued from the Gaza Strip, a soldier. I'm curious, I know not a lot of information has been released so far, but by rescuing that first hostage, does this give the IDF indication of how to get the rest, 240 that still remain in Gaza? Did this give an indication of how to best proceed with that as well?
Well, I'll tell you, this is definitely shows the importance, as we've been saying from the very beginning, of a ground, having ground forces employed in this operation. We clearly acted on intel with special forces in a combined unit, and we were able to bring Ori Megiddish home, which is in this very dark period an incredible ray of light. And it shows the professionalism of the IDF, our ability to move forward with really our core goals. The first goal is to completely dismantle Hamas, secure our border, and as we've said from the beginning, bringing home all of those hostages, every one of which, whether they're from Israel, foreign nationals, dual nationals, we consider family. We're not going to leave anyone behind. And this just shows our capabilities and really the spirit of the IDF in trying to bring everybody back home.
Well, I'm also curious because you said such a bright light definitely shows the success. However, it also indicates to Hamas that you guys are coming in, you're coming in strong. And so it also puts the pressure on them to possibly take more of those hostages and go deeper into the underground tunnels that we know they're hiding in.
Well, Hamas from the very beginning sees these hostages not as really people, just like they don't view their own civilians as people the way we do. They're bargaining chips. That's the way Hamas looks at everyone in kind of the theater of evil that they've set up. Right? This is really an orchestrated, in advance theater of evil. All of the acts are right according to the ISIS protocol. Massacre Israelis, recede back into Gaza with bargaining chips, hide behind civilians, try to divert the world's attention from Hamas's terror capabilities by putting civilians in the way of fire and taking hostages. I'm sure that they are and have been putting those hostages where we think that we cannot get to them, but we are ahead of the game in many respects. We have excellent forces, and I'm not going to go into operational specifics, but we are doing everything we can to bring these people home, and we will continue to do so. And Hamas needs to know, as we've said from the beginning, the hostages are going to come home, and at the same time, we are going to continue with our military goals of dismantling them. It's not going to prevent that from happening.
Doron, you mentioned how Hamas continues to use their own civilians also as human shields, really, against the activity that the IDF is doing in the Gaza Strip. Do you have any intelligence as to how many Gazans actually remain in the north rather than heeding the advice from the IDF and evacuating to the south?
That 800,000 approximately Gazans have managed to leave northern Gaza according to our instructions and go to southern Gaza. What we know is that Hamas is going against that advice completely and against the laws of armed conflict by forcibly keeping many of their civilians in northern Gaza. And we are doing everything we can, and we call on the international community to do everything it can to let's move those civilians out of the way of fire. Again, we know why they're there. Everyone has seen the footage that we've released about with Shifa Hospital and numerous other locations that they're there in order to provide cover for Hamas, but they are breaking international law. And really, the world needs to focus on this and demand from Hamas, move those civilians south, get them out of harm's way, and bring home the hostages as soon as possible. We are here to bring home our hostages and protect Gazan civilians. And therefore, really, this lies at the doorstep of Hamas to handle this.
You mentioned some of the hospitals as well that I know earlier the IDF has released those images and statements that the headquarters for Hamas is directly under Shifa Medical Center in the Gaza City. We've also seen reports that the IDF has encouraged the Al-Quds hospital, anyone there, to evacuate. Is the IDF going to be asking those residents or those people in Shifa Hospital to evacuate? And if so, how is it possible to evacuate the largest hospital in all of Gaza?
As we know, this is a war. It's extremely painful, has a very high price for civilians. This all began because of Hamas's complete disregard for civilian life. And Hamas is really the humanitarian problem of Gaza. And reaching Hamas means we have to reach them wherever they are. And therefore, we have encouraged, in many of these cases, for civilians to leave these areas. We know it's not simple, just like it's not easy for hundreds of thousands of Israeli civilians to have left the north and the south because of Hamas. Whatever the price is, it's a much better price to pay than being there when we are there eliminating Hamas. Again, this is wartime. Eliminating Hamas in the long run are going to help not only the Israelis, but also help the people of Gaza. And yes, they have to leave these conditions and move to a safe area, but it is much better than the alternative. And once again, we're calling on the international community to call out Hamas for what they're doing. It is against international law to use a hospital as cover for terror operations. And it is, again, the finger needs to be pointed at Hamas possible, and they are putting those people in danger.
Meanwhile, as we continue to hear everything that is happening out of the hospital, certain calls for a humanitarian crisis, lack of energy, lack of food, lack of fuel. However, the IDF releasing satellite images of Hamas tanks of fuel in the Gaza Strip. We continue to see these images saying they have, hundreds of thousands of liters of fuel to use at their disposal, but Hamas is taking it. So why has IDF not destroyed those tanks yet if we clearly know where they are?
Well, as we know that Hamas, there's enough fuel in Gaza to power Gaza. Hamas prepared this well in advance. They've confiscated not only medicine and fuel from even United Nations facilities.